Hey folks, it's your old buddy Bill Meeks here. We're about to get started with another live episode of Where I'm From. Just wanted to hop on here real quick and let you know that this is a live episode. If you've been watching over on the Where I'm From YouTube channel, Where I'm From podcast YouTube channels, please subscribe. You'll notice that there's a lot of editing and, there's no flubs or dubs. This is all about the flubs or dubs. We're going live. There's going to be flubs. There's going to be dubs. There'll be an edited version in a couple of weeks, but we would really love for you to join us for the live chat. I'll also say right up here up top, I've been trying to figure out a way to have like a audience feedback episode. And I thought since Thanksgiving's coming up and a lot of people are going home for Thanksgiving, maybe I could get you all to shoot some short little clips and we can throw it all together into an episode about everyone's home for Thanksgiving. So if you want to be involved with that, shoot me an email, bill@billmeeks.com. And I'll swallow, and then I'll shoot you back some details a little bit closer to the day. I'd love to do that, though. I really want to get some audience participation going here. All right, well, I think that's about it. Rebecca's waiting in the wings, so why don't we go ahead and, kick off the show? I think that'd be good, right? We could just kick off the show by clicking this button right now. Welcome to Where I'm From, the podcast that proves no matter how far you go, you'll always keep a little piece of home with you. I'm Bill Meeks. This week, Rebecca Johnson, fan podcaster and communications specialist for the University of Alabama Museums, joins me to talk about where she's from, Birmingham, Alabama. Or I think it might be Birmingham. Stay tuned to find out why there ain't no ham like Birmingham. You might know Rebecca Johnson as one of the hosts of Supergirl Radio, a podcast devoted to the CW Supergirl series and ancillary media that she started in 2015.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Noyce, and you're listening to Supergirl Radio.
McGurk! I love typing.
Not mess with my Google Docs, Meeksy. Supergirl Radio is going live every night of the week. How do you like it?
Rebecca's also worked in media for a number of years, as she explains in this clip from my still unreleased documentary, 1 Week in March.
There. So I've worked there for 14 years. I worked for Turner Classic Movies and Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and TBS and TNT and did some things for Boomerang and CNN. And so I got to touch a lot of cool entertainment television and got to learn a lot about the television industry. Just recently, within the last 6-7 months, I moved back to Birmingham, Alabama to be closer to my family.
Rebecca left Turner and Atlanta in 2019 to return to where she's from, creating content for the University of Alabama Museums.
And I noticed that in the area where my Canada geese friends hang out, there are a lot of feathers.
Birmingham, or Birmingham, was considered the center of the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s, mostly due to the connection Martin Luther King Jr. had to the community. Birmingham also played an important part in my story. You see, Rebecca co-starred with me on my serialized comedy podcast, The Fakest, One Last Day, and I used elements of Rebecca's backstory for her character, Leanne Snyder.
After college, I went to work for my hometown station, WAFM TV3 in Birmingham, Alabama. My first day on the job, I met Jerry Springer.
Today, I'll ask Rebecca what it was like growing up in Birmingham, why she left to pursue a media career in Atlanta, and what drew her back years later. Okay, let's talk to Rebecca. And welcome to Where I'm From, Rebecca Johnson. How you doing, Rebecca?
Hey, Bill, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. I mean, I kind of had to, right? I think you've been involved in some way or another in almost every podcasting thing I have ever done. So, it has to be, right?
Well, I always try to squeeze myself in there somewhere. But I've also had you in some of the things that I've done. So I guess it goes both ways.
Absolutely. Maybe not quite as often on Supergirl Radio lately as I would like, but it's okay.
Well, we can make that happen. We can change that up. Meeks could make another appearance if he wanted to.
He's right here behind me, so yeah, he's just waiting in the wings. Very good, very good. Okay, how's Birmingham doing tonight?
It's great. Actually, right before I came to talk to you, I was down at the Birmingham Museum of Art at their Star Wars night. So they had some Star Wars themed activities, some art activities, which I couldn't figure out. It involved a stencil and some sort of black felt. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. But they also had some James Webb telescope stuff down there. So it was a cool night. So I try to indulge in some of those Birmingham things when I can. So that was a fun evening. So I just happened to indulge in some Birmingham things right before I spoke with you.
And that's kind of why we have you on the show too, because if nothing else, I know you know education in Birmingham because that's your gig, that's your main gig.
I've been around it a long time. I was not born in Birmingham. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and we moved to Birmingham when I was 2. So I've really only known Birmingham, except for the 14 years I was in Georgia. But other than that, I've been a Birmingham, Alabama girl for most of my life.
Functionally from Birmingham.
Yes,
Functionally
yes.
from Birmingham. Yes. All right, well, let's go ahead and dig into it here. Give me a second to pull up the questions. This is one of those flubs and dubs I told our live viewers about. Okay, let's see here. I just accidentally scrolled like halfway through the document. Okay, here we go. Clean cut. All right, Rebecca, you've been a media professional for a number of years, but you also have a history of volunteering as a camera person at Buckhead Church in Birmingham. Tell me about
well, actually, it's Mountaintop Church. Buckhead was
Mountaintop
in Atlanta.
Church?
Yeah, so I was a volunteer at Buckhead Church in Georgia, in Atlanta for 14 years, and then Mountaintop Church for 3 years.
Gotcha. Well, why don't you tell me about how you got involved with the Atlanta church and how it's transitioned over into the Birmingham church now that you're back?
Yeah, so when I was in Atlanta, I wanted to find a church and get involved somewhere. So a friend of mine, my friend Christy, just happened to be, I knew her from college, and I was asking her where she went to church and what she was doing. And so she invited me to go over to Buckhead Church. And back then, this was so long ago, it was actually a church in an old grocery store. So they had renovated an old grocery store, and you could tell it was a grocery store when you kind of walked in. You could kind of feel it. But I just wanted to get involved with the production crew because I had experience with that. And when I was in Atlanta, I was working at Turner, but I was not using camera operation skills while I was in my day job. So I thought that would be a good way to keep up some of those things that I had learned because I pretty much went there 2 years out of college. So I had learned all that stuff in college and wanted to keep up those skills. So I fit right in there and did that for a long time. It was a live production skill set that I did. I did roaming cameras and stationary cameras. And so then when I moved back to Birmingham, so I grew up in Birmingham, moved to Georgia for 14 years, and then came back to Alabama to Birmingham. And so when I came back, I was like, well, I've been doing that so long, I should find another place to go to church and then try to get involved. And so I did seek out a church that had a pretty good production service opportunity. And so I do that maybe once a month, not as much as I maybe did at Buckhead Church, but I try to do it once a month, and it's usually stationary cameras.
Were you able to bring in any practices or techniques or anything from Atlanta, bring them back home to Birmingham?
Yeah, it's really funny because the church in Atlanta was very fast-paced. We had 6 cameras, and so the directors that would direct there, they did it a lot. They knew what they were doing. Not to say that the directors of the church I go to now don't know what they're doing.
No shade.
It was much more fast-paced, and it was much more the cuts were faster and the moves were faster. And so that's kind of, I've had to transition a little bit out of that, but I try to find ways to be creative with a stationary camera, which can be tough sometimes. So I play with focus and racking focus and try to find creative ways to do stuff. But I would love to try to sit in the director's chair at some point. That's one of my goals, is to maybe work my way up, do a little technical directing, and then work my way up to directing, because I think I could make some adjustments and bring some of those skills with me.
Well, there's definitely one or two little productions I've heard of that you kind of serve that role in, like Supergirl Radio, for example.
Sure. Yeah. No, I actually do a lot of video stuff for Supergirl Radio.
So basically, I think what we need to do here, we need to do like a letter writing campaign, right? To get you to be director at the new church.
Well, I've tried to start off, earning my cred by, doing my time as a camera operator, and then eventually maybe I'll get that chance in the future. But, I want to earn that rapport with everybody else on the team. So when I get to the director's chair, they'll all respect me because they're like, Rebecca knows what she's doing.
Absolutely.
It's a plan.
And I'll put myself full camera here so I can say Rebecca does know what she's doing, folks.
I appreciate that vote of confidence.
That's actually probably not worth very much. It's probably going to be worse for you in the long run, but we'll see.
I think it's worth a lot. Thank you.
All right. So, Rebecca, when I reached out to you about being on the show today, you mentioned you wanted to talk about the City Stages Music Festival in Birmingham, which would happen, I believe, over Father's Day weekend for around 30 years or so. Why don't you go ahead and explain to the listeners what it was and why you kind of fell in love with it and miss it?
City Stages was a music festival that would take place in downtown Birmingham. And by the time I had I went to college and was still going to City Stages, it had gotten quite big. There were a lot of stages, and you could go and listen to different kinds of music. You could hang out. You could get, food at some of the vendors. And it was just a place where people gathered, and you could hear a lot of bands. There were some big names. I was trying to revisit some of the people that were on some of the lists, and like Bonnie Raitt was there, John Mayer was there. I remember going to hear Edie Brickell because I love Edie Brickell and the New Bohemians. Oh my gosh, I love Edie Brickell. I also remember going to see Nelly. The time that Nelly was there, I felt like I was in danger because we heard gunshots at some point, and I was like, okay, it's time to go.
Yeah.
But I do remember I don't remember Nelly performing. I just remember going to try to see Nelly and hearing the gunshots. That's what I remember.
And the gunshots and running.
Yes, the gunshot was part of the performance, I guess. I don't know. But then I also remember one of the things I really remember about City Stages was going to see Cameo. Do you know of the band Cameo? They're very famous for the song Word Up.
Yeah, Word Up. Yeah.
WORD up. I love that song so much. And I was the only person in my group of friends who was like, we are going to see Cameo play. I don't care what else y'all do. I am going to see Cameo play. So I remember going to City Stages when I was a teenager, when I was in high school, and a couple years into college. And I just really loved it. It was a great downtown experience. I was a huge music fan then, and there was a lot to see. And I just remember gathering there and you could sit on the grass and just have a good time and listen to the music. And I do remember having, aside from the Nelly gunshot thing, I remember having really good memories of it, hanging out with my friends. You could buy a weekend pass and go every day. And so that was a very, I have fond memories of that. But as I later discovered when I had moved to Atlanta and I had heard they're not doing City Stages anymore, I was like, why are they not doing City Stages? Apparently they had financial troubles. So it sounded like maybe they could not afford it anymore, or they had gotten into debt. Maybe some of those big names and all those stages maybe cost a little too much money and they couldn't handle it anymore. But I'm so sad that is lost in the Birmingham experience now, because I don't know of another a music festival that's like that. And so I have good memories of it, and I'm kind of sad it's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What was I going to, sorry, I got it. And this is another one of the flubs and dubs category. I just realized that my recording is not recording. It's okay though. Give me just 1 second.
I love Bill's Meeks Pitalik there on the wall. I don't know if I need to fill in some space with some talking and some banter. But Meeks Pitalik was a guest appearance on the Supergirl Radio that Bill so graciously decided to help us out with for a Meeks Pitalik character spotlight for some comic book stuff for Meeks Pitalik. And I give Bill all the credit for coming up with Meeks Pitalik. So genius.
All right. Hopefully I got this going. If not, it is what it is. And thank you for the kind words on Meeks Pitalik, by the way.
Genius.
So there's really no other music festivals in Birmingham that are up to that scale?
Not that I know of, but it's funny. When I moved back to Birmingham from Atlanta 3 years ago, and so I'm having to rediscover parts of Alabama and parts of Birmingham, and I'm trying to go places and do things that I didn't do when I was here previous to my Georgia experience. And so maybe that's one of the things that I need to put on my list is to find a music festival. I'm sure there are other smaller or more niche things, but City Stages was just a huge operation, and I don't personally know of anything that's like that.
I really think you need to just charge up to Birmingham City Hall with your ukulele and be like, I'm going to put on the new City Stages starring Rebecca Johnson.
And they'll be like, okay, you set up your own stage. We'll give you a permit. Nobody will show up. I could play all the songs I know, and that would be maybe a 10-minute set.
Nice. Okay, well, that'll be the cut for the City Stages question. Let me go back and see if this is recording.
I should add that I don't know if the gunshot was confirmed. We all thought it was a gunshot.
It could have been a popcorn bag pop.
It could have been. We just assumed it was a gunshot. It sounded pretty bad.
Rebecca, why don't you compose a limerick to Meeks' Pitalik real quick?
A limerick.
Yeah, well,
I'm the wrong person to do that.
Come on, you can compose.
I am not a good writer, and I'm not a good a rhymer. I would need my rhyming dictionary, like on 30 Rock when Ghostface Killah says that he needs his rhyming dictionary to Jack Donaghy. So I would need a rhyming dictionary in order to do that. But I do have a lot of love for Meeks Pitalik. He was annoying, but we found a way to make that work. So I hope that was believable to the audience, that we had an imp from the fifth dimension show up on the pod. We need to have more guest appearances. Just show up and leave.
I mean, I believe I've heard that Meeks Pitalik will, on request, send in video voicemails for Supergirl.
Oh, okay. So. The only problem with Meeks Pitalik is finding new ways to get rid of him. that would be the tough part, to do that online. So I would have to find new ways to do that.
Yeah, it's weird. It just, my camera keeps bugging out. So I guess I won't have all the clean feeds I like to have. It's all right though. We'll move on. All right. So shake it off, Bill. Let me see here. What questions do we have here to ask?
I can keep vamping if you want me to, if you need more time.
I was enjoying the vamping, but we'll go ahead and just move forward because I don't know if we have any live viewers right now, but if we do, don't want to spoil the experience for them too much. Okay, so where are we here? All right, okay, ready to go again. All right. Okay, so Rebecca, your first gig out of college was editing news stories at WVTM, a local station in Birmingham. Now, I've worked in news myself, and I know that newsrooms can be stressful places during big events. What was the story you kind of felt the most when you worked there, and did it turn you off from TV news?
Ooh, there are two things that come to mind when you ask that really excellent question. The first was when I was at WVTM, there was a hurricane that had hit the Gulf Coast. It was called Hurricane Ivan. And that was a big deal. And for some reason, I don't know what they're called, the local stations, general manager, the guy overseeing everybody. I can't remember.
Yeah, the GM, general manager.
Yeah. So the general manager, I think he had come from NBC or something. He thought he was, the national news. He thought he was big stuff. So when he came down, I don't remember his name, so I can't call him out. But he wanted us to go 24/7. He wanted us to be live 24 hours for Hurricane Ivan. And so we were sleeping at the news station. I had to take an extra pair of clothes. It was a little ridiculous. I'm going to be honest. Some people that maybe it benefited some people, but I thought it was a little over the top. But that I remember that being kind of stressful because we were all kind of on edge because we didn't sleep very well at the news station, and so that was kind of stressful. And then I
worked at I worked at a news station in Orlando, Florida, which incidentally I believe is owned by the same company that owns the station you worked at. But yeah, we had probably once or twice a year we had a hurricane issue where people would have to stay in and like my office would get converted into a bedroom with like two or three couches so people could come in and crash for a couple hours. It can be intense in a news station. I mean, it's nice because they bring in lots of food, all that kind of stuff. But by the same token, a lot of people end up getting stuck at work for 36, 40 hours, 50 hours, something like that.
Yeah, it's not so bad, but like if you're not sleeping well, everybody gets kind of on edge, and it can lead to bad decisions or poor decisions in terms of like making mistakes. So that's the downside of that. But hopefully we were a benefit to the people in the Gulf Coast of Alabama during that time, because that was a pretty big hurricane that affected a lot of people, including my family, which had a beach house in Gulf Shores at the time. So that was it was funny when we had the footage from Gulf Shores sent in to us. I was like, oh, that's our beach place. so it was kind of, it brought it home to be sort of a personal thing. But so that was one incident that I remember. And then I remember something that's really shameful, a shameful part of my life, because I feel really embarrassed about it. So back in the olden days, this was 2004, I think, we were operating at a VTR machines. The kids these days probably don't know what those are, but
Not
we had
a VCR, a VTR.
Yes, a videotape recorder, I guess is what it stands for. I might be wrong about that, but it was a VTR. We had 7 VTRs. And they were DVC Pro, so we had these tapes. And in the news business, I don't know if this was your experience, Bill, but back then, in the olden days, we had to edit all the VOs or the packages, whatever it was, on the DVC Pro tapes. And you'd have it labeled on a sticker label on the tape. And then if you were doing ingest, is what we called it, because you were ingesting the tape into the VTRs, and you would have to do it in a certain order based on the rundown, so that it would be in order to when the news packages need to show up on air. Well, I was doing ingest that I guess it was night. It might have been a 6 o'clock, all eyeballs on this newscast at 6 o'clock, where probably most people got their news. And I had misordered the tape somehow. I don't know how it happened, but I put the wrong tape in one of the wrong machines, and it threw everything off. And I tried to recover it, and it just became a total disaster. Like, I don't know if we had to, I can't remember what happened after that, but I remember the anchors on the air going like, what is happening? I remember just being so mad at myself because I had screwed that. Like, I had done that many, many times before, and somehow that got messed up. And so that was one of the things that I just had to suck up as an adult and be like, okay, that bad, terrible, embarrassing thing happened to me, but maybe I'll learn from it and try to use that as a character building moment in my life. And that's just how I try to see it now. But it was one of those, like, I may have cried after. It was bad.
You know, I hate to say this right after you said you cried, but you know what's really funny? You crying. No, I'm kidding.
I can laugh about it now. It's fine.
And we'll talk about this a little bit later, too, but you played Leanne Snyder on my comedy podcast, The Fakest.
Played is very generous.
But
yes.
who I was not aware of this aspect of your backstory where you had like this crisis, in the newsroom. And that's exactly kind of how Leanne's story gets started, is she has a complete meltdown and realizes she's not cut out to be an anchor while live on the air. So that's another little parallel there between you and Leanne. Yeah,
Leanne and I have a lot of similarities, but she's also kind of better than I am in a lot of ways. So that was a time I remember very vividly. Is like, oh no, I've messed this up. What do I do?
So I have noticed that you don't really work in TV news now and haven't for quite a long time. What was the big thing that kind of turned you away from it or made you not pursue it?
It was the stressful aspect of it. I was not a proper full-time employee when I was there. There was some program that I was in that I was kind of basically a part-time paid employee. I was doing it for the experience and the resume building. But I remember having to work. I had to do 3 people's jobs most of the time. I would do ingest and then dial in satellites and do the editing and sometimes hop in on production. And it got to be where it was and this sounds silly based on what I do now, it was too much for me at that time. And I remember being really stressed out about that. And it was, because news is it's maybe not like they show it in the movies. I don't remember which news movie it is, but it had Joan Cusack in it. Is it News? I forget what it is. But there's a scene where she has to like run a tape down the hallway get it on her. I did that many times where I was running down the hall to get to a tape to be on air because it would be so late. And sometimes that was not my fault. It was I was waiting on other things from other people, and I just remember being so stressed out about a lot of that, and I just. It sort of turned me off on it. I loved all of the production aspect of it, despite my screw ups, and I really liked the people there. It was too stressful for me.
Well, it's like news. They're really intense people. Both everyone I ever knew who worked in a newsroom, they really believed in the mission of journalism. They really believed in their day to day of it, and they really tried to be the best they could be at all times, which can be really stressful when you're right in the middle of it, because maybe you don't feel like going 120% today, but everyone around you is, so you have to go 130 just you show up in the rankings. What else was I going to say? I had a question for you, Rebecca. What was it? Sorry, I'm still distracted by the camera thing. It's okay. Let's see here. What was I was going to ask? There was something that was really interesting that I was going to ask. This is why we do the live flubs and dubs version, folks. The people who get the version later won't get all this stuff.
Was it about the stress level or?
Stress level, DVC Pro.
DVC Pro was the top of the line back then. It was.
Well, I still have like 3 DVC Pro tapes from college in my closet. Like I don't have anything that can play them. But
I don't think anybody does anymore.
But okay, so yeah, we'll just go ahead and move on. I think that was a good wrap up. Okay, so Rebecca, I know you went to high school in the Birmingham area. You went to college in the Birmingham area. Were there any teachers that really sort of inspired you or sort of set you on a path to what you're doing now?
Well, I have to clarify 2 things. So so Birmingham is actually, there's downtown Birmingham, which most people think of as Birmingham, and then there are these suburbs that are outside of downtown Birmingham, and so one of those is the place where I grew up. So if I wrote you a letter and I put Rebecca Johnson's address, Birmingham, Alabama, it would still be the correct address. But what I would normally put would be Vestavia Hills, Alabama. So that was the place where I actually grew up from the time I was 2 years old until I went off to college, which was in Tuscaloosa, not Birmingham, which is about 51 miles away. So Vestavia Hills. And I don't know how it's like today. I know that they're doing some new things to the high school, which I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But when I was growing up there, I felt a little out of sorts because it was a wealthier part of Birmingham. A lot of kids that I knew drove really nice cars. I had a Chevy Lumina, which was a big tank of a boat of a car, and I didn't even get that until I was a senior in high school. And so a lot of the kids had wealthy families, big houses. My house where I grew up was a smaller house compared to the mansions up the street from me. My dad worked 5 jobs. My mom was a teacher. It was like there were things that didn't make me sort of fit in with some of the other kids in my school. So naturally, I was a band nerd. I was a band geek. So I sort of, that was my crew. I wasn't with the popular kids or the athletes, the cheerleaders, the people who had the big parties and the big houses. I was hanging out with the band nerds, and that was totally fine with me. But Vestavia is a wealthier area, but it also, to my great, I guess, pride about Vestavia is that a very good education. We had very famous, well-known, successful math and debate teams. My brother also went to Vestavia Hills High School, and he was a national Lincoln Douglas finalist, which is
Oh,
a
wow.
pretty high up in the chain for debate. I tried debate once for a year. I was not that great, so I quit. So I was like, I guess my brother's the debater. I will be in the band. That's fine. He quit band, so I guess we balanced everything out. He did the debate side, I did the band side.
Yeah.
But we had some really strong academic things. We had my senior year, we had a state championship football team. We had a lot of trophies, which Vestavia was very proud of. So it was a wealthier area, but there were some kids like me that had to work a little harder for things and didn't get some of those things. So, but I loved Vestavia. I had a really good education. When I got to college, I realized that the things I learned in high school, some of the other kids maybe didn't learn, like how to write an essay or, how to do certain things, how to write a paper, how to write a term paper. Those were sort of basic things I had done my whole high school career. And some kids when I got to college had no idea how to do that. So I am very grateful for my time at Vestavia Hills. And I always thought it was a good school system, but it was an interesting experience in terms of some of the things that the other kids had.
Yeah. Like I went to a larger high school, so I mean there were rich kids and poor. There was a pretty wide divide. There were the people who lived down on the island, who might be on welfare, or their parents might not have a car, that sort of thing. And then there were people who lived up on Renaissance Way up in Bethlehem, who lived in a mansion. And it always because of the nature of the school, there would always be a lot of mixing in the classes of these different economic areas.
Oh yeah.
As you got older into the upperclassmen stuff, it would kind of split off, because these people would go on like the shop track, and these people would go on the theater track or the academic track or whatever. But it definitely did you ever have any moments where you saw those sort of class barriers break down at your school?
Oh, breaking down. Oh, that's an interesting question. When you first started that question, I was thinking about how my friend Clay was the basketball team's manager. And he was, his family wasn't a rich family either. Like we kind of, middle class families or whatever. And I remember he was telling me a story about how he went to one of the popular kids, rich family. His dad was like some sort of brain surgeon or something. I don't remember what medical field he was in, but he had a huge house, and this guy lived near me. And so I knew which house it was. And my friend Clay was telling me, like, yeah, I got invited to a party because he was with the basketball team. So he would get up in that house, and he got to see what it looked like inside. And I remember being so jealous, like, what did it look like? So I remember those kinds of, sometimes things would mix a little bit, where I guess that kind of did break down just because Clay had, been such a faithful member of the basketball team. And so he was sort of accepted in because of that. So he got to take a look behind the curtain.
Yeah, that reminds me of, because I got involved in theater the last couple of years of high school. And when we would have cast parties at the end of the show, they would be over one of the other people's house. And it would be like a mansion. Like there'd be like this big underground bunker, indoor pool, all this stuff. I was like, man, like, we have like a 300 square foot house for 50 people. I guess you could say it was aspirational though for me. I was like, look, people can actually, make money and have things and do things.
Well, I have to say, the guy who lived in that fancy, big, huge mansion house, I ran into him when I was in Atlanta. I went to an SEC championship game because the University of Alabama was playing in it. And I just happened to see him in this like gift shop that was there in the stadium. And I didn't think he would know me, remember me, but he said hey to me. We had a conversation. He was perfectly nice. So it wasn't to say that all the rich kids were snobs or something like that. But it was just interesting, after we had grown up and gone our ways and our paths in life. It's just interesting when that happens, when you kind of run into somebody so much after so much time has passed and kind of see what they're like now. So it was kind of interesting.
I remember the last time I was living back in my hometown, I ran into my first girlfriend, and because I was like back in town for a few months and I was delivering pizza, and she happened to come in to get a pizza while I was there delivering it. And I was like, oh man, of course it's like when I'm at my lowest, she shows up. Nice. Oh, okay, I do have some good news, Rebecca.
What's that?
My recording has been going for a full 3 minutes now.
Okay.
No stopsies.
Good.
So hopefully I'll stop calling out the tech issues.
That's good. That's good.
Okay, so Rebecca, Birmingham is a city that is really big on food. What are your favorite places to eat in Birmingham?
Yeah, so Birmingham has I don't know when this started, but when I was in Georgia, all of a sudden they decided to have all these new restaurants come and be amazing. And so now that I've come back to Birmingham, my brother has made it his priority in life to make sure that I go to all these really good restaurants, because he'll ask me like, have you been to this place? I'm like, no, I don't know where that place is, and he'll shame me for not having been there, and so then we'll make a plan to go there. So he's been introducing me to a lot of these places, and he actually told me recently that Birmingham is nicknamed the dinner table of the South. It is so well known for its food industry, which was started by this man named Frank Stitt. He started these restaurants. One of them is called Highlands Bar and Grill. It's probably one of the most famous ones in Birmingham. Bottega is another one of his, I think, and it's pretty famous. And Chez Fonfon, I really like because it's French food, so I can go and kind of indulge in the French side of my brain that I enjoy.
Yeah.
But the ones that I really like, those are the famous ones. They're great. I appreciate them. But the ones that I found that I really love, there's a place called Batola, and it's an Italian place. For me, it has really great Italian food, pizzas. But I remember the last time I went, we had the most amazing charcuterie board.
Ooh,
And I was like,
I'm a fan of a good charcuterie
I've
board.
got to come back for this charcuterie board. If I don't eat anything else in the menu, this charcuterie board is the stuff. So I really like Batola. I've been there a couple of times and I highly recommend it. There's another place called Helen, which is really relatively new. They do like family style dinners. And they have angel biscuits, which are these little square biscuits. And they'll have them as appetizers. You can get them as appetizers with this like crazy butter. I don't know if it's like caramelized or something. Like there's something in it that just is the most amazing butter you're ever going to put in your mouth. And so the angel biscuits with that butter is so good. It might as well be a dessert. It shouldn't be an appetizer. It should be a dessert. And they've actually made angel biscuit ice cream. There was one time they changed their menu a little bit, but I got the angel biscuit ice cream and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So the angel biscuits, if you go to Helen, get the angel biscuits. It's worth it. It's so good. So Helen and Batola are probably my top two favorites.
Have you ever tried making the angel biscuits yourself?
No, but I need to try that. They would not be as good as the ones at Helen. Helen, I think the key to that is that butter that they make. So if you don't, I mean, the biscuits are good, but that butter is so good. So I really liked Helen. I've been to Helen a couple of times. Helen is like now our like family restaurant of choice when we want to celebrate a birthday or something. We're like, we're going to Helen, or because it's just become a popular place to go in my family.
Nice, very nice. And again, another in the flubs and dubs bucket. The recording's still going, so I'm very, very happy now. Very, very happy. Sorry to interrupt the flow here, but we'll cut all that out. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Man, my throat's like really. I'm really going like full flubby dubby since we've already gone so full flubby dubby. It'll be
all right.
we have the edited version of the podcast.
Yeah,
It'll be
it's fine. It's totally fine.
Okay, so Rebecca, you mentioned that you really like the Alabama Theater. I was doing some research on it. Looks like it was built in 1927 by Paramount Studios, and it's still in operation today as a movie theater and entertainment venue.
Correct. Yes.
Well, since you told me you wanted to talk about it, let's talk. Why don't we start here? Tell me about the first time you went there.
The first time I remember being there, which may not be the first time I went there, but I was probably a sophomore in high school. I remember that my friend Cheryl had called me up saying, "Hey, would you want to go down to the Alabama Theater and watch Gone with the Wind with her then boyfriend Matt and her?" And I was so young that I didn't realize what I had been roped into. This was basically just a way so that the parents didn't think anything was going on with the two of them. I was kind of the shield, and I didn't realize I was being used at the time. But I was like, sure, I'll go down and see a movie. I take that back. That might have been 8th grade. It might have been middle school.
I've totally been in that position. I get invited to my sister's boyfriend's house to play video games, and it turns out it's really just so they can see each other, and I'm the chaperone, but not really.
Yeah. I was extremely used that day, but that was the first time I saw Gone with the Wind, and it was the full deal with the intermission and everything. And we sat up in the balcony because, of course, with Cheryl and her boyfriend. I will not name names, but I probably should have changed her name to protect the innocent. But it's already happened. Cheryl's been called out. But we sat up in the balcony, and it's just such a beautiful place inside. They did a lot of renovation to it, and it's just I think it's like a wonderfully preserved place inside. And I have a soft spot for old movie theaters. I just love them. I wish I could go to more of them. I would make a documentary about them. I love them.
The grandeur and the velvet curtains and
that Jim Carrey movie called The Majestic. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing. This is
that is an unsung classic.
Yes.
Like minus the 30 seconds where Jim Carrey's crying and he looks like The Mask. Like, I mean, it's a perfect movie.
If I could have like people sometimes ask me, what's your dream job? And I'll be like, well, I wish I was Tina Fey, or I could be a head writer on a soap opera. Or what. That's all a lie. I wish that I could own and operate an old movie theater. That would be actually the dream, because that would be so fun. But I remember having despite being used by my friends, I had a really good experience there, and I enjoyed. It was a different thing. It wasn't just going to the regular movie theater. It was some different place, and it had a different feel to it. It made you feel like you were in the past, and so that was my first experience. And they do a lot of summer movies like that, so that would have been a summer movie, Gone with the Wind, which is 4 hours long, so it's a time commitment.
It came on like 4 VHS tapes back in the day. It's a monster.
It's a crazy long movie. But the summer movies, they'll do movies in the summer, and then they do movies during Christmas. So I like especially try to go to the ones during Christmas. I saw Christmas Vacation there last year. And so that's a really fun time. They decorate the theater and, Christmas decorations. And I also recently saw a concert there. So they do concerts, they do plays. I saw a play when I was in high school there. So they do a lot of things. I think they do, they do performers come and do concerts. They may do stand-up there. I've never seen a stand-up there, but I'm sure they would.
Being a young artist in Birmingham, did you ever have an opportunity to actually perform there? Like, because I know you've done music and stuff.
Yeah, I was in the band, so I played bassoon and clarinet, but we never performed there. I have some friends who have performed there. The only time I ever did anything artsy was that I shot and edited a video for a friend of mine who wanted to propose to his girlfriend in a very special way. So his plan was that he was going to make this music video with a song that he wrote and performed, and then I was going to help him make this music video, to be played at the Alabama Theater. So I actually had something screened at the Alabama Theater. I may not have played my bassoon there, but I had some. So he played the video over the screen there. And then after it was over, he proposed to his girlfriend. So all of his friends and family were there. And so it was kind of a cool thing. So I actually had a video of mine that I shot and edited, screened at the Alabama Theater, and there was an audience there to watch it. So that's actually pretty cool.
Very cool. And, this is the live version. You'll send me that video so I can cut it over the top of you talking about it.
Sure, yes.
Perfect. You're a total pro, Rebecca. I knew you could handle it.
Don't judge it. It was shot back in like 2009, 2010. It was a while back.
Oh, I'm going to be judging. I'll be judging. Nice. Yeah, that is fun, though. I'm trying to think, because another situation where a question popped up while you were talking, and then I said something else and forgot what it was. Yeah, I lost it. It's okay. It's okay, Rebecca. We're all going to survive. Don't worry.
I should add there is a an organ there, which
Ooh.
is something I didn't mention before. But there is a pipe organ at the Alabama Theater. I think I looked it up. It's a Wurlitzer Opus 1783. So it's a
Oh,
pipe
wow.
organ that comes out of the floor and it pops
Mm-hmm.
up. And so they use it to do sing-alongs during Christmas time for Christmas carols. And I'm in a couple of days, I'm actually going to go see the Phantom of the Opera silent film there at
Ooh.
the Alabama Theater. And so I imagine the pipe organ may be used for that as well to fill in the music for the. I've never seen a silent film in the proper silent film format, so I'm excited to
Yeah.
see that. So they do so many really unique and fun things that you wouldn't be able to get there. So I really love the Alabama Theater so much.
And probably partially it's set up to do all that stuff because, like I said in my research, Paramount funded it back in the day.
Well, they've had to do a lot of fundraising, and they have people who are in Birmingham. They have a lot of people who are very passionate about the Alabama Theater, and I was a member of the Alabama Theater. So I think that there are a lot of people who don't want it to die. It's a landmark in Birmingham, and so everybody really wants to make sure it's taken care of so it can keep going.
Just to touch back really quickly on the pipe organ thing, I find that super interesting because back, before the talkies and stuff, the way they would distribute films is they would send out a film canister and they'd send out sheet music, and you'd always have a live performer sitting there performing the ding 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 as Charlie Chaplin was chasing a horse down the road. So, or I'm sure it sounded much more majestic coming from that pipe organ.
Well, I'm sure there's a little bit of that as well.
Nice. So, Rebecca, what would you say as far as types of cuisine? Like, what types of cuisine would you say are quintessential to Birmingham?
Oh, that is tough. Oh man. Well, I know a lot of people in the South think about barbecue. I love barbecue, but in terms of Birmingham, I mean, I just think when you think about Birmingham food, I think barbecue is kind of lazy to be the one to talk about. Although there's some really good barbecue places here.
Yeah.
There's a barbecue joint called Saul's Barbecue, which is excellent. They have a couple of different locations here in Birmingham for that. Ooh, quintessential. The thing about Birmingham food is that the students of this man Frank Stitt, the students and the now restaurateurs, who the students kind of had their own restaurants. They do their own thing, and they're so the remarkable thing is that there's a lot of variety about what you can get here. I mean, there's a great place called the Pita Stop that I love that has the best hummus in the world. There's a Greek festival, a Greek food festival that happens, I think, every October. So
That's fun, like one of those things downtown where there's like music and
oh yeah,
food.
yeah,
All
yeah.
that stuff.
So there's Greek food in Birmingham.
Some gyros.
There's some French food at Chez Fonfon. So there's El Barrio has Mexican food there. I mean, there's just so many different things that I don't think I could narrow it down to one thing. Just because there's so many different places. When I was growing up, we didn't eat out a lot. If we did, it was like the Olive Garden was like the fanciest place we had. There was this place called J. Alexander's that might be the fanciest place you'd go, like for your homecoming date or something. But and I speak from personal experience about that. I did go to J. Alexander's for my homecoming date. But the thing now is there's so many things to choose from. It's just blossomed into this big foodie place. So there's so much variety here that I really couldn't answer that question for you.
What would you say, because barbecue came up a bit in my research too. Apparently Birmingham kind of prides itself on the barbecue. What would you say is like the signifier for barbecue? Because like Atlanta, I believe it's generally a little more sweet. Down in Central Florida, there's usually a bit more spice to it. Like what is Birmingham barbecue like?
That's a really good question. I don't know that I can speak to that, but like Dreamland Barbecue is a pretty famous place. There's a Birmingham location, I think still, but there's a Tuscaloosa location as well. So Dreamland, what I think about when I think of Dreamland Barbecue is when I was in college, I went to Dreamland with a couple of friends of mine, and what surprised me, I don't think this is the way they do it now, but in the like original Dreamland place, they had instead of napkins to use, you would just clean up your hands and stuff with a piece of bread, like a piece of white bread. Like it was so genuine barbecue. But in terms of the taste, I don't know that I could tell you. I'm trying to think. There's also another great place. I don't know if it was founded in Birmingham, but Jim and Nick's is a very popular place here. But I think Jim and Nick's may have other places around the South. So barbecue, I would probably not be the person to ask about that because I eat barbecue, but I don't eat it for the
You're not a
the artisan taste of it. But I would probably say that for me, barbecue is great. Saw's barbecue is awesome. I think a lot of the sauces maybe are the key to that, the way it's maybe seasoned or something like that. But I'm trying to expand my taste palette. I'm trying to go and eat things that I haven't eaten before and try new things. So for me personally, I'm trying to expand my horizons outside of barbecue.
Yeah.
But there's some, like I said, I would recommend if you ever come to Birmingham, go to Saul's Barbecue because that's the place to go.
Better call Saul if you want some barbecue. Nice. Okay. Well, Rebecca, we've come up to our first game, and I'm very excited about this for two reasons. One, it's a new game I just came up with like an episode or two ago, and it's a lot of fun. And two, I completely forgot to put stuff in for it. So this is going to be crazy.
Improv. Yeah,
it's going to be great. It's going to be great. This is called Wheel of Anecdotes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a suggestion, and then your challenge is to respond with a short anecdote from your hometown. 30, 40 seconds, the shorter the better. Okay, you think you can handle it?
You know I'm bad at improv. We did some improv on the Fakest, and I was terrible at it. But I'll give it my best shot.
Yeah, I remember that. It was the best stuff we did. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So here we go. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. The first word: car keys.
Car keys.
Car keys.
Well, recently, just within the last couple of months, I went to a function that I had to do video for, which was in the Birmingham area. And I had thought I was trying to get something out of the console of my car. And while I did that, I dropped my keys unknowingly in the console, shut the console thing in the middle of the car, stepped out, locked the door from from inside the car, because that was just kind of habit at the time. I don't do that anymore now. But I shut the door and realized I had locked the keys in the car. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to cause a scene by calling AAA or something and have them come out here with all these people going into this event that I'm supposed to be a camera person for. So I'm just going to suck it up. We're going to do the event. I'm not going to try to freak out that my keys are stuck in my car. And I'll just deal with it after it. So I have a very good brother who came and picked me up later on that evening. And then in the next morning, I had AAA go out there, and the keys were there. It was fine. I don't have a copy to my key. I probably should make one of those. But
they're
was
super
my yeah, they are expensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's that's the most recent car key anecdote that I have for you.
Nice. Okay, forest.
Maybe this is tangentially related to forest, but this is kind of a funny story. So there's a place in Birmingham called Oak Mountain State Park, and I went there with some friends in high school just on a Saturday. We were just goofing around. We went hiking. We hiked up to this place that has a waterfall, and we did some biking. And then after we had finished all of our activities and we were about to go home, my friend Nick said, "You have a tick in your ear." And I said, "Oh, that seems like a problem." And he, thankfully, he was an Eagle Scout, and he was like, "I'm a scout. I know exactly what to do." And I trusted him enough to let him do this to me. And if he had not been an Eagle Scout, I would not have trusted him to do this. But the way you get a tick out is you light a match and you put the match on the tick, and then it detaches it somehow. So he lit a match. I think he put it out. He lit it, put it out, and then put it up in my ear because it had embedded itself in the the part of your ear that's sort of hidden away. And he got that tick out. So that, I guess, had happened in the forest while we were at Oak Mountain State Park hiking around the park.
Nice. And that was right on brand for what we're looking for here. So you're doing good so far. Okay. It's hard to come up with words off the top of your head. Let me see here. Newspaper.
Oh, That's a hard one because people don't really do newspapers anymore. Well, the newspaper in Birmingham is called the Birmingham News. It is now, I think, with all the digital stuff now, I think it might be kind of in al.com, which is where a lot of people get their news. But I guess that's probably the only factoid I can give you about that. It's interesting. I never wanted to, when I worked in news, I always wanted to be in the TV side. I never wanted to do newspaper and have to write things out.
You wanted to be 70s Clark Kent versus all the other times Clark Kent.
Correct. I wanted to be the Clark Kent that actually didn't make the most sense. Like, why would Clark Kent be on TV? What a stupid choice.
I love how he would like jump in his news van instead of a phone booth to change into Superman. So like,
you're trying to hide a secret identity. What are you doing on television? But yeah, so I think it's always been kind of interesting to me that I never wanted to do newspapers because I didn't want to write. I'm not a good writer. I only do it when I have to. So I respect the newspaper people because they actually love doing it. But it was just never something I was interested in.
All right, let's see here. Swimming pool.
Oh, swimming pool. Well, the swimming pool I grew up in was the Vestavia Hills swimming pool that was associated with a walled park, which is in Vestavia Hills. And I remember going to swimming lessons. My dad would take me. I think he would take me to my swimming lessons in the morning one summer, and then he'd get me sort of cleaned up, and then he would take. I think I was maybe 5 years old at the time, 6 years old. And then he would take me to Vacation Bible School. So I had this really early swimming lesson, and then I would go and do that. And so that Vestavia Hills swimming pool was the pool that I associated with a lot in my formative years. We would also go to that swimming pool when I was in high school. We had a band party out there, and I think I was the president of the band that year, my senior year. And nobody was getting in the pool. We had this pool party and nobody was getting in. Nobody wanted to do it. So my friend Victor and I were like talking about how do we get people in the pool. And so we just sucked it up. And so Victor and I just hopped in the pool. We just jumped right in. And so that kind of encouraged other people to get into the pool. So that pool actually has a lot of good memories for me. It's where I learned to swim and where I had a lot of fun times.
I love that anecdote because it says Rebecca Johnson is a strong, bold leader, and that's what I know to be true.
Well, I would like to think so. We were just trying to get people from stopping standing on the sidelines, but so, somebody had to set the example.
Yeah. Okay, one last one, and this one I'm going to challenge you to relate it directly to Birmingham.
Okay.
Because I know you'll have a million stories not related to Birmingham.
Okay.
Comic book.
Ooh, comic book.
Well,
the first time I remember seeing a comic book was at a local comic book shop in Hoover, which is one of those suburbs I was talking about that's in Birmingham. And I don't think that place exists anymore. But when I was 9 or 10, the Dick Tracy movie had come out. One of my top 5 comic book movies of all time. People are always like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yes." It's
good design, good acting, good script, good comic book adaptation. I read when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's
around
great.
Good. Yeah.
What great soundtrack. Stephen Sondheim, come on.
Madonna as the
Breathless Mahoney.
I was going to say something else, but that might be a spoiler.
Or yes, don't reveal who she really is.
No spoilers for the 30-year-old movie.
We'll keep that twist intact. But that movie had recently come out, and I was obsessed with it. I loved it. I had the T-shirts, I had the magazines, I had the trading cards, I had everything. And so I told my mom I would like to get a comic book. So my first comic book that I ever bought, I don't have it anymore. I have no idea what happened to it. I don't know where it went. It probably got lost when I moved to Atlanta somehow. But the first comic book I ever bought was a Dick Tracy comic. And I remember going there with my mom and I got to pick it out. There were several ones that I could pick. And I can't remember what I picked. I would not be able to recognize the cover of it. But that was the first time I'd ever seen a comic, ever owned a comic. So it was just, that was a real treat for me. And so that happened in Birmingham, that I was able to do that I found that I had a love for them.
I believe one of the early comics I got was an adaptation of that Dick Tracy movie too. I don't think, actually, Rebecca, you're going to hate me for this. I don't think I've ever actually seen the movie, but I had that comic book adaptation. I read it like a million times. So I know about the kid. I know about the Madonna reveal at the end, you know. So
I think you would really like the music. The lyrics are really clever, and I think you would appreciate that.
Well, didn't Stephen Sondheim worked on the music a little bit, didn't he?
He did the lyrics, I think. I don't know if he did the music as well, but the Stephen Sondheim is very difficult to sing. But I still listen to that soundtrack because it's just, the music is so good.
I'm a huge Sondheim fan. I've only ever been in one show, and I didn't get to sing because my voice isn't good enough. I got to cry like a baby off stage.
That's totally fine.
Which is fine, because I mean, that's kind of fun in its own right. Okay, well, Rebecca, that ends the Wheel of Anecdotes, and I want to let you know you won big and I lost big because I forgot to prepare it, but I think it came out all right.
Winner.
All right, nice. Well, folks, we do have to take a quick break here to take a word from our sponsor, but we're going to be right back in just a couple of minutes with more Rebecca Johnson, Birmingham. Tons of fun. Stay tuned. Where I'm From is brought to you by Stream Studio. That's STREANN Studio, the web app that puts you in charge of the live show. Stream Studio allows you to take your streaming game to the next level by allowing you to stream to multiple platforms at once. If you want to go to Twitch, if you want to go to YouTube, if you want to go to a website that isn't supported even, you can stream to all of those platforms at once, get feedback from your audience, and most importantly, it puts you in control of the show. Now, Stream Studio has several packages that work for just about any type of broadcaster. From the free plan, where you can stream with a watermark, all the way up to the gold plan, where you can have up to 8 guests. You can stream to as many social platforms as you want. You can get a web link to share your show with external audiences, and you can even get an iframe so you can embed your live stream show directly into your website. Hey, I love Stream Studio so much, I'm using it to produce this show. I want to thank Stream Studio for supporting Where I'm From, and you can give this fantastic software a spin and support Where I'm From at the same time. Just head over to our website at billmeeks.com/whereimfrom and click on the Stream Studio banner so they know we sent you their way. And we're back. So Rebecca, when you said you were going to come on the show to do this episode, I knew I had to ask you about this, and we kind of alluded to it before. You starred in my comedy podcast series, The Fakest, as a character named Leanne Snyder, who just so happens to work in a local Birmingham news station before getting a job for a national outlet in another city. Pretty similar to the Rebecca Johnson story, by design in a lot of ways. What was it like for you to play a character for 3 years that was kind of very much based on you and your actual real life?
You actually made it so easy for me because I'm not an actress. I don't know anything about acting. I've never studied acting. Even when I was a kid, I tried to do plays and things. I could never memorize stuff. I was terrible. I did a one-act play in high school my senior year. I was mostly an extra, so it was so this was actually a good way to dive into being a voice actress, and it was nice for me because I didn't have to really be an actress. I could just be myself, and so I don't think I'll be doing any other performance-based voice acting because I don't think I would be able to do it. But actually playing a character that was based off me helped me a lot in doing that, because I remember when you asked me to do it and I was like, really, do you want me to do this? I don't think I'm right for this, but having something that I knew about and was familiar with, and especially with the news component, I felt very at home there with some of the ways that the stories were told and the things that they were doing, so that was actually, it was the right choice to base it on part of my life.
Yeah, the really interesting thing is that a lot of the individual details I based on your life sort of happened in your life after the fact. Like the one thing that I think of is I always had it planned for Leanne to come work at the Fakest, and eventually, when her story concludes and she wins the day, go back home to Birmingham, return the hero's journey, return to from when she came. And I think it was a few months before I started working on the last season of The Fakest, where I was going to write this, how Leanne gets back to Birmingham. You moved back to Birmingham.
Yeah, when we started The Fakest, I was in Atlanta in my little closet recording that stuff in my house in Smyrna. So yeah, that's right.
I'm going to assume it was research for the role, which is why you moved back.
I was very dedicated.
Well, that's actually probably a good thing to talk about, though, right now, is, you went to Atlanta for so many years and then you came back. Like, why did you end up coming back? And what was it like kind of readapting to an area you'd been gone from for, 14 years?
Yeah, 14 years. In 2019... my mom had 2 pulmonary embolisms, which are 2 big blood clots in your lungs. Ooh. And she was in pretty bad shape with those pulmonary embolisms. And I remember being in the hospital with her and my brother, and I hated having to leave them because I had to go back to Atlanta. And once she was kind of okay and back at the house, I had to go. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, this stinks that I can't help anymore now. And that started a thought process for me that was like, I could be there more often than I am now. I could do that. And I had been looking for a new job for a couple of years before that anyway. So I was already trying to have an exit strategy from Atlanta, and maybe not even from Atlanta, just from my job. I worked at Turner for 14 years. That's back when they were Turner. And now I don't know what they're called. Media Group, whatever that's called
Warner
now.
Brothers Discovery Learning Channel Expo.
I don't know what they're called now, but when I worked for them, it was Turner. And I had been trying to find a job in Atlanta and somewhere else. And even within Turner, I tried to find other jobs and nothing ever happened. Mm-hmm. And so I just took that incident with my mom, who did get better and she's doing great now. But I took that as a thought experiment for myself. Like, what would it be like if I did move back to Birmingham? How would that happen? What would I do? Yeah. And I remember talking to my friend Monica about, new jobs, because she had transitioned into different jobs. And she always told me, don't wait until you're out of work to get a new job. Make sure that you're still in a secure job situation and then look for the job.
It's monkey bars, right? You got to get your hand on the next one before.
Yeah, so I always thought about that, and so I just kept applying to things, and I don't know what compelled me to. I guess maybe it was because I was looking for Birmingham close jobs, that I found a job opportunity with the University of Alabama Museums, and I happened to apply for it because I was like, well, that sounds like something I could do. So I just applied to everything. I applied to the Botanical Gardens social media position. Like I in the Atlanta Botanical Gardens, I should specify. So I was applying to everything that I thought I could do. And it just so happened that one took and that they were interested, and that was my exit strategy. So there were a lot of things that took me out of Atlanta. I have many, many reasons. The biggest one was my mom's health. But at Turner, I had some great times there. I did some really cool things. Conan O'Brien showed up one day, and that was kind of interesting. He hated the heat. He talked about that a lot. So there were some. I stood in a fire drill situation next to Robert Osborne one day, and I still kick myself that I didn't ask him questions about Ginger Rogers. So I had some really interesting times at Turner. But towards the end of my career there, I didn't like my job anymore. It was actually kind of boring. I wasn't doing anything interesting anymore. I wasn't being challenged in what I was doing. I wasn't progressing anywhere. And so I was kind of over it. And some of the culture there at that point was kind of unpleasant too. So there were just a lot of things that sort of built up. My house was kind of a disaster where I lived, and I was kind of tired of living there. So it was just, there were so many things in my life at that time that I was like,
You forgot
it's time
the
to
most,
go.
You forgot the most important thing was that for like a year or two before you moved, one of your best friends in the whole world, Bill Meeks, moved away from Atlanta.
It's true. It was a real blow to my time in Georgia.
Well, let's dig into that. So how did it affect you emotionally when no, I'm kidding. we don't have to get into that.
It was sad because I didn't get to hang out much with y'all until like right before y'all left. I wish I'd taken advantage of it more often.
Yeah, it was like the year before we left. I know we met up like 3 or 4 different times. Like we went out to lunch with Sark and met up for Free Comic Book Day. You came over to record a Gotham commentary on a Gotham podcast.
I should have done that more often.
Absolutely. And then you never got to visit us when we lived in Orlando. We always wanted to go to the parks with you.
Oh, that would have been so. Well, we could still do that.
The podcast is descending into Bill gives Rebecca crap. That's no way to treat your guest.
That's fine.
All right, Birmingham. Okay, so are there any local scandals or urban legends or Birmingham stories that you think people who don't live there might find interesting?
Scandals. I mean, obviously there's the civil rights movement had a lot of things that happened in Birmingham.
Oh yeah.
The 16th Street bombing happened in Birmingham. I actually drove by it today. And that was interesting because when I worked at WVTM, that was during the time when I forget all the details, but they eventually prosecuted those guys who set off the bombs, and they figured out who it was, and they put those guys away. And that happened while I was working in news. I should remember it better than I do, but I remember that being a monumental thing that they, all those many decades later, got justice for what happened at 16th Street. And
why don't you explain to the listeners, if they don't know, what exactly happened?
So I don't know all the details, but
yeah,
basically when you boil it down, 16th Street Baptist Church is a church in downtown Birmingham, and one morning everybody was going to church on a Sunday, and there were 4 little girls in this little Sunday school class who there was a bomb that was set off, and they died in that explosion.
Oh, wow.
And it was done by some pretty bad guys who I guess just had an animosity towards the black people of that church. And so it was very contentious in Birmingham during the civil rights era. There's a lot of horror stories about Bull Connor, who was a politician at the time, who I can't remember what position he had in Birmingham government, in local government, but he put hoses on the black people downtown, and there's horrible pictures of that happening. So that's probably the worst part of Birmingham's history. I'm trying to think if there are any like funny scandals that would have been something that would have been
because that was the opposite.
Humorous. Yes, that's pretty serious. But one of the things I think should be said about Birmingham that I never hear anybody talk about, and which always kind of upsets me about the way I think it was called the Green Book, the Black Book, whatever that movie was called that won all those Oscars, about the guy who drove the famous black guy around, and they went to those places that were safe for black people at the time.
Oh yeah, I can't remember what it's called.
The Green Book, maybe?
Maybe the Green Book.
In that movie, it portrays Birmingham as this racist place, and at the time, it probably some of that was going on. But it's upsetting for me to watch that stuff now because Birmingham has moved so past that.
Yeah.
I'm so pleased with how people treat each other in Birmingham, either downtown Birmingham or the outer suburbs that are associated with it. And I'm so glad that that's not the case anymore. So I wish more people talked about how we've progressed as a society here in Birmingham since those terrible times. So I just wanted to make that be mentioned that, we're not all Bull Connors down here. We actually get along fairly well. And maybe that's why I can't think of any scandals. I'm trying to think there. I think
I will say that that's absolutely, good to hear that it feels like it's moved on from the really bad old days. Where do you think Birmingham, especially like on these issues of race and things that it's known for, where do you think it stands now in comparison to, say, any other modern American city, major modern American city?
I'm sure some people would probably not believe me when I say this, but I think we're probably, in my experience, maybe other people have experiences that would inform them otherwise, but I think we're down here in Birmingham and maybe even in Alabama, the South. I don't see a lot of prejudice stuff going on. I live there. Are Black people in my neighborhood. I work with Black people, and I never see things, and not, I don't want that to be like, well, I have a Black friend. I'm not doing that kind of thing. I'm just saying like that I don't see those kinds of things going on, and maybe it's because it's not in my area. I don't know. But I remember being in Railroad Park, which is now a really beautiful part of downtown Birmingham. It's one of the things that I could also mention. A Railroad Park is this public park. The Alabama, I almost said Tuscaloosa, but the Alabama Symphony plays down there sometimes. They have concerts. You can go down and walk your dog. I think there's like a little skate park. Runners go down there. And I remember one time we went down there for Christmas, and they had a little ice skating rink, kind of a makeshift, man-made kind of a thing. Because in Alabama, if we get snow, it's in like April for some reason. Yeah. But there was an ice skating rink, and I remember while I was standing there thinking, how remarkable this is. There were Black people, white people, Hispanic people, all kinds of different races, ethnicities, diversity that was happening all in that little ice skating rink. And I thought to myself how amazing that was, that just, decades before, this would have not been a thing that Birmingham would have been known for. And so maybe other people don't think that's an amazing thing, but I kind of stop and think about that sometimes. And I guess there's an element of Southern hospitality that goes with some of that stuff now, that everybody's just real friendly to each other. And we call out the jerks that they're jerks. Like we can let them know it. But I just think that we have progressed so much since then. And I would like to think that we are less prejudicial than most cities, just because we do have that element of, because I think if you know that history, when I was growing up, I knew all of that history. I knew about the 16th Street bombing. I knew about MLK Jr. I knew about the civil rights stuff that happened in Birmingham. We were taught that in school. Yeah. And I always remember thinking, like, I don't want to be like that. And so I don't know if there were other kids like me in my generation, but I think maybe that has informed some of the way that we act now.
Yeah, I'd imagine, growing up in that area, not only hearing about it in history class, but probably, first-hand accounts from like aunts, uncles, grandparents and stuff would have a profound effect on, how you treat those sorts of issues. Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely good. Obviously, it has to be better than the 50s and 60s, right? It's good to hear that, it's on an upward trend, and, let's hope that continues.
I agree.
All right. So what's it been like for you moving back? Did you find your life sort of picked up right where it left off? Or are you still in the process of like re-getting acclimated and building a new one?
Well, I'm still trying to relearn Birmingham. I used to be able to get around downtown pretty well, because before I worked at WVTM, I also interned for 6 months at what was then the AmSouth Bank building, which is now the Regions building. And so I worked at downtown for 6 months and then got a job at WVTM. So I was downtown a lot back then. And so now I'm having to relearn all the streets and where things are. And so that's been tough. But I mean, I would still come, even when I lived in Georgia, I would come home, once or twice a month. So I still kind of knew things, but I'm trying to remember, certain elements of where things are and what to do, trying to figure out, what's to do around here. I'm finding new museums and new things, new activities.
Well, it was probably hard for you because, you moved back and then within a year COVID-19 happened and everything. So.
Within 6 months, I was in my job and living with my mom for 6 months. Like, this is a transition period before I go and get my own place or whatever. And then the world fell apart, and I was like, well, okay, this is what it is now. So it has been a transitional period that I haven't totally, I guess, gotten out of. But I have enjoyed being back, and I'm glad. I think it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made to come back. I don't regret it at all, because even though I've gained weight since my my time back in Birmingham, partially because of all the good food here, and also partially because Rebecca needs to exercise more. Yeah. But that's been the only thing that has been different.
Being stuck in the house probably didn't help a lot. I know a lot of us are having this issue.
So that's my only complaint about being back in Birmingham. It causes weight gain.
Nice. There was something I was going to mention. There was another fakest parallel. What were you just talking about? It was before the last thing.
Was it about my mom, or was it about
your mom? Oh yes. Okay. Another parallel that with our fakest storyline though, which I thought was really kind of interesting, was probably about a year before the whole COVID-19 thing happened. We did an improvised episode, which you were great on, about the big red cloud in somewhere west of New York City, where everyone went into quarantine for a month. And it was me, or my character, Paul, your character, Leanne, and Wynn Mercer's character, Grace Hooper Stafford.
Grace, yeah.
All locked up in a bunker down below the station for a month plus. And who knew a year later that we would all basically be in that bunker with a big red cloud. Yeah,
that was foreshadowing, I think.
Hey, foreshadowing for real life. If you haven't listened to the fakest, go back and listen to it.
That is a good one.
There's stuff I called out in there that hasn't happened yet. You can be the first. You can be warned. You can save yourself.
It's all just a prophecy podcast is what it is.
In a lot of ways, yes. It's the fakest, but it's fake for now. In the future, it'll be
right.
true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Anything else? Okay, so, in addition to Supergirl, because you host Supergirl Radio, you're a big fan of Supergirl, you love comic books in general. Were there a lot of outlets for a young comic book fan in Birmingham?
Well, after that incident I shouldn't say incident, after that experience of going to a local comic book shop to pick out my Dick Tracy comic, I didn't really get as hardcore into comic books until I actually moved to Atlanta. So that's kind of where I started to really, really dig into comic books. But even then, I think my biggest outlet for comics when I was growing up here in Birmingham were movies and TV shows. So I loved Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. I did love and still do love the Helen Slater Supergirl movie. I don't care what you say. I still love it. I realize it has problems. I will defend it until my dying day.
I'll just say really quick, the way you differentiate Supergirl from Superman is you put her in a world of magic. That's it.
It works totally, 100%. And I was a big Batman fan. And I still am, but when I was growing up, Batman 89 was the stuff. And I think a lot of people of my generation, I want to speak for you, Bill, but Batman 89 was so transformative for a lot of people, especially for people who love comics.
Absolutely.
And that was a movie like that Dick Tracy movie. I had the t-shirts. I went to the fast food places to get the stuff. I had the Prince album. I remember playing the Prince songs on a jukebox in Waffle House.
Bat Dance and
Bat Dance, yeah. I got made fun of. There's one that has
Vicky Vale as a sample.
So Batman 89 was such a big movie for me when I was growing up, and I remember. So this may be like my biggest comic book story that I can tell you that doesn't have anything to do with an actual comic book, but it's sort of tangentially related. But when I was growing up, I guess I must have been 12. Batman Returns came out on VHS, and I love Batman Returns. I probably love it more than Batman 89. I'm one of those weird people. I love Tim Burton. I know it's a kind of a creepy, weird movie. I think it's great. I think that's why I like it. But I remember it taking 7 months for that to come out on VHS. I remember counting down the days for that to come out. And this was back in the day when we had things called, there was a store called Service Merchandise. And you had to, it was almost like a precursor to Amazon. You had to order it, and then somebody would go to the back and get it, and it would come down on this assembly line
one of those catalog shops where you'd fill out the thing and you'd hand it at the counter. Yeah.
It was a weird, why did we do that? That was so weird. But I remember the day that my mom took me down. My mom really, now that I think about it, she really fed my my nerd geeky things. I don't know that my dad would have done this, but my mom took me down to buy the VHS copy of Batman Returns. And so that was kind of my biggest thing. I would sort of geek out on the nerdy stuff in my private time in my personal life, but like when you're a girl growing up, going to high school, middle school, you really during that time, the geeks have it good these days. But back then, in like the 90s and early 2000s when I was in college, like you didn't really talk about that stuff, even if you loved it. So
because you would get mercilessly mocked for it.
Probably if you were a girl, people would have thought that was weird. And maybe it was, but I didn't care. But
I always say weird is good. People always like go, weird. I'm like, no, embrace the weird.
So I didn't really get a chance to dig into like really reading comics until I moved to Atlanta, and I was kind of by myself, and so that was a way for me to read and kind of dig into something to pass the time. Sometimes when I first moved to Atlanta, I didn't have a lot of friends, I didn't know anybody, and so I know that sounds like a sad, sappy story, but comics were a good outlet for me to read some of those things and connect to those characters in my free time.
A lot of comic book fans have sad, sappy stories about it. Like me, I got into them so much because I was homeschooled and I wasn't really allowed to have friends outside of the church, and I didn't like the kids in our church. So I went and got comic books, and Superman was my friend. Batman was my friend.
Right. Yeah. So I wish I had read more of them when I was growing up, but I more so leaned into the adaptations of them more than I did the actual book. So once it clicked for me, like what a comic book was and how basically in my mind it's like a storyboard. It's a storyboard that tells the story of something, and I was like, oh, it's like a film, and so that really kind of clicked for me, and that started my love for comic books.
Yeah. Along a similar line, the thing that kind of like really made me hook into comic books and think, besides these are cool superhero stories, no, this is an art form, is kind of Scott McCloud's thing where he talks about like the space in the gutters, and that's where your brain gets to make a movie every page of a comic book you read. Between the panels, like someone's like this with a gun, and then the next panel, there's smoke coming out of the end of the gun. You get to fill in that blank, and it can be as big and expensive of CGI or whatever as you want, because you're the one imagining it. So
yeah, I can actually tie that to a Birmingham centric story.
I love it.
A couple of years ago, I went with my brother down to the Birmingham Museum of Art, and we were taking a class that was a free class offered there about slow art. And if you don't know what slow art is, it's a movement in art to make you slow down and look at a painting or look at a sculpture and really take it in and let that inform what you think about it. What do you feel about it? So you might stare at a painting. It sounds silly, but it's actually a really good practice. You look at in that class, we looked at some paintings for about 5 minutes. Total silence with these other people in this group. And then the leader of the discussion would say, so what do you think? What sticks out to you? And it was so funny because after so many, probably, I don't remember how old I was so it must have been a decade or more that I'd been reading comics at the time. And because of my comic book reading, when I did slow art, I could feel the temperature of the stuff outside. I could hear the noises that might have been taking place in that, that landscape or whatever. I could hear the little kids talking in the paint. Like I could just kind of envision that. And I think it was because of my comic book reading, where I had to read words that, told you what the sound was and made you, or at least made me have to feel what was going on in the comic book panels. And so I don't think I would have had that same experience with art if I had not been reading comic books. And so I always attribute my ability to feel and appreciate art a little more because of comics.
I always say, it's next to jazz, it's really one of the only American art forms. And people think it's kids stuff, but there's some pretty advanced stuff going on in comic books. For sure. Okay, Rebecca. Well, we've almost done a full Tobolowsky. We've pretty much gone as long as Stephen Tobolowsky did. But I do have one more game for you, if you're game for the game.
Let's do it.
Okay, excellent. This game's called Hometown Hot Takes. Now, what we do here is I give you two options, two different things from your hometown, usually, and you have to pick one as a winner and explain why.
Okay.
Understand the rules? Got it?
I can do this.
Okay, first up, WVTM versus WDHN.
DHN. I don't even know DHN.
I believe it's the CBS affiliate.
I know ABC 3340. I know WBRC.
Okay, let's do out of all the stations.
Oh, okay.
Which one do you pick?
Oh, that's really tough because I haven't been inside. The only one I've been inside their studio recently, like within the last couple of weeks, was WBRC, and I was so impressed that everything has changed so much. They have the remote control cameras inside this. There's nobody in this. There's no camera operator in the studio anymore.
Yeah, it's all the guy at like master control with a joystick.
I think that's cool, and it looks cool because they're like all these high-tech cameras that are just kind of hanging from the ceiling, so it's kind of interesting. But I think you also miss that human element of like actually having to truck a camera and like setting it up yourself. So there may be a downgrade in quality because of that.
It's news. It's not exactly film or something, but there's artistic choices to be made, and shooting a news person and rolling it around a news set.
Yeah, I have fond memories of WVTM and the people there, even though it was super stressful. I really liked the people I worked with. But if I had to pick one, because WBRC has been good to my job, so I guess I will say WBRC just because they have been so good to what I do with the University of Alabama museums, and they were nice enough to let me be part of an interview. Well, I wasn't in the interview; I was there for sort of moral support, but they let me be in the studio.
I'm just writing down here that your pick has a professional consideration attached to it, so it should be considered suspect.
That we can be transparent about that, yes.
Okay, next up, this is since they're both companies have major bottling operations in Birmingham. Coke versus Pepsi.
Ooh, well, if I was in Atlanta, I would have to say Coke. But
because that's the big mothership, Coke.
Yes, you cannot drink Pepsi if you live in Atlanta. It's funny. A lot of people will, when they talk about Southern things, they'll talk about peanuts and Coke. I have never once done that. I don't know who these people are who do that.
Toss whole peanuts into Coke?
I guess so. I guess I'm gonna have to try it now that I'm back in Birmingham. I don't know who these people are.
It's like boba but aggressive.
Yeah, I don't know that I would like it so much. But I'm kind of more of a Pepsi girl. I remember being in the $1 Million Band when I was at the University of Alabama, and after the halftime shows, they would hand out Pepsis, and that was like your big reward for having done the halftime show, because you got that at post halftime Pepsi, and that was a good Pepsi. Like that was nice. Like it just tasted so much better after that. So I think if I don't drink sodas anymore, but I think if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Pepsi.
Excellent, and a very Birmingham anecdote related reason for it too.
Yes.
I love it. Okay, so the Vulcan statue versus that Vulcan we all know as Mr. Spock.
Well, I'm not a Star Trek person. I'm more of a Star Wars person. So I respect Spock. It's not that I'm hating on Spock, but I just don't have an attachment to him. I've only been at the top of Vulcan once. I used to drive by it all the time because WVTM is right up there. It's in that same sort of location. You have to go up the same scary hill to get there. And I remember before the world ended because of the COVID-19 pandemic, it was for your documentary that you were making, and you gave out some prompts.
Yeah.
And one of them was like to go to a place in your hometown you've never been to before or something like that. And I was like, well, I've been wanting to go to Vulcan and I haven't. And it was almost a mistake because I was like, yeah, I can walk the steps. You can walk the steps, or there may be an elevator or something in there. I can't remember now. It's been a couple of years. But I was like, oh, I got this. I can get up the steps. It's no problem. And it was a severe amount of steps. I was like, I don't know that I can get to the top. So that was my first mistake. Then I got to the second mistake was when I got to the top. I finally made it. And I've developed over the last couple of years, like a little bit of a fear of heights, but I forced myself to do it. I was a little terrified to be on that edge. I only stayed out there for maybe 2 minutes. but I stayed out there long enough to get a selfie with a Vulcan and go back down. But I was glad that I did it because Vulcan is such a recognizable figure in Birmingham. And he was even used, Birmingham was recently the host of the World Games. And I think he was used. They had the trophies were little Vulcans. So I think Vulcan, even though you can see his bare butt, so he's mooning the entire city. I think he's a landmark that you can't miss, and it's very Birmingham, and it actually has a great museum that's attached to it that tells the story of Birmingham. So if you go to Vulcan, go inside the museum because it's very well done. So yeah, I'm gonna go Birmingham Vulcan on this.
You say mooning the city, I say high art. And actually, this is another loosey-goosey thing. I will be able to edit that video footage of you from 1 week in March right in there. So,
and I have a picture of that I can send you of me at the top of Vulcan.
Excellent, excellent. Put it on the list. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so Rebecca, you know I don't know anything about sports. I'm going to try this here. Bulls versus Stallions?
Okay, so the Birmingham Bulls.
Yeah.
I have not been to a Birmingham Bulls game since I was probably in middle school. I need to go back. I recently learned that the University of Alabama has a hockey team, and the hockey team plays in a Birmingham area known as Pelham in their home games. And so I'm like, I got to go hockey games now. I've got the Birmingham Bulls, and I've got the University of Alabama hockey team that calls themselves the Frozen Tide, which I think is adorable. And so I'm going to go Birmingham Bulls because I actually used to go to those games a while back, and I had a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, moon pies versus banana pudding.
Oh, that's not even a question. It's banana pudding. Oh, my gosh. I've tried moon pies. They throw them out at Mardi Gras. If you don't know, Mobile, Alabama is actually the original Mardi Gras. New Orleans kind of took it and has become maybe more famous, but
they really ran with it.
The Mobile Mardi Gras is the real deal. But in the Mardi Gras Mobile, actually in the $1 Million Band, when I was at the University of Alabama, we marched a parade. There was a Mardi Gras parade that we marched in, and I think we ended up marching like 7 miles. It was something ridiculous.
Oh wow!
It was so exhausting. I never want to march in a parade ever again after that. But I remember when we were marching, people would throw moon pies at the band while we were going. I was like, nope, this has turned me off moon pies forever.
Moon pies aren't particularly hard, but I'm sure getting one chucked at you does not feel great.
There's a heft to them. There's a weight to them. But banana pudding, though, even aside the Mardi Gras story, banana pudding is you talk about high art. There is an art to that. Dreamland has a really good banana pudding. A lot of the barbecue places do some really good banana pudding, but
do they put like the Nilla wafers in the banana pudding?
Oh yeah. You got to have the Nilla wafers in there. That's like a key component.
Got to.
Yeah, I'm a banana pudding girl all the way through.
Okay, and Rebecca, last but not least, Alabama the state versus Alabama the band.
Well, I'm trying to think of all the songs I know from Alabama the band. Are they the ones that did Dixieland Delight? I cannot remember.
I'm not sure.
I mean, Alabama the state. I think there's probably a song by Alabama that I really like that I cannot think of at the moment. But Alabama the state, I have really taken to heart to rediscover this place because there's a lot of amazing things here, and some things I did when I was growing up, like, in Montgomery, we have the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. So I like to go down there to see some Shakespeare. I went to see Macbeth recently, and it's good. If it's not Shakespeare, I don't want it. So like that's really awesome. I recently went to Helen Keller's house. I had never been there in Tuscumbia, Alabama. I'd never been to the Fame recording studios where Aretha Franklin recorded Respect and all of those things. That's in Muscle Shoals, a very famous place for music. I'd never been there before. So I'm trying to mark off all these like famous places in Alabama that I have never been to. And there's some small towns and some beautiful places that I want to go to. Everybody tells me about Mentone, Alabama. What's in Mentone? I don't know, but everybody tells me to go there. So that Mentone, Alabama is on my list. And everyone I work with the Alabama Museum of Natural History, and everybody there talks about the biodiversity of Alabama, which basically means we have a lot of stuff here in terms of living organisms, and we have like the best biodiversity here. That means we have a lot of variety of plants and trees and animals and bugs and birds, and so it's something that I'm trying to pay more attention to because of how famous it is. People will come to Birmingham, but the state of Alabama. People will come to Alabama for research purposes because of that great biodiversity. So we'll have people from, I work with a guy who's from the Netherlands. I work with a guy who lived in New York at one point. Like people come from all over to Alabama because our natural world and our nature areas are so beautiful and so unique. So I just love being back in Alabama. I think it's a great place. People, I think, people outside of Alabama have this old-fashioned notion that we're all a bunch of rednecks and we don't have running water and we don't have shoes and we just, we're just
yes, I know. I wrote Grandma Snyder on the fakest pretty country. Sorry about that.
I mean, for the fakest, an exaggeration was actually appropriate. But a lot of people think we're just like rednecks who don't know anything, that are just all inbred. And I'm like, we have rocket scientists here. Like we have we've sent people to space. Like, wow, we have an amazing, diverse aspect of our history that we have here in terms of, I mean, even the fossil record and all this stuff. I mean, Alabama used to be underwater, so there's a lot of sea creatures and shark teeth. I mean, it's crazy down here. So we have a lot to offer here in Alabama, and I really just I don't think people understand that Alabama is actually a really awesome place. And so I just want to be the representative, if I can represent the state of Alabama, to say, we deserve a little more respect, I think. And you're welcome for the space exploration.
Well, Rebecca, I have some good news for you. You were losing. You had like negative 300 points.
No, that's bad.
That passionate advocacy for Alabama right there at the end put you over the top. You're at 17 million points. You win hometown hot takes. Congratulations.
Yes, awesome. I feel so accomplished. Thank you.
Nice. All right. Well, that about does it for the show tonight. Rebecca, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know you were a little hesitant to be on the show. I thought you did a great job. If people enjoyed that Rebecca Johnson brand of content, where can they find more of it?
Sure. I'm not a famous person, so I appreciate Bill slumming
You're
it with me.
You're famous to me.
So
you're the voice of Leanne Snyder from The Fakest.
I guess that does make me a voice actress of note. But if you would like to follow me, there are a couple ways you can do it. You can check me out on Supergirl Radio. We're a weekly podcast about the CW Supergirl TV series, but about all things Supergirl and Kara Zor-El. So if you like comics, if you like animation, if you like the Helen Slater movie, we talk about that. We actually had a debate where we debated it out. I defended it. So we talk all things Supergirl. So if you want to check that out, you can go to supergirlradio.com. I also have a personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/duckmilkprod, where I do film analysis. So I talk about other people's reviews, and I talk about why they're terrible. And so I try to use that as a way to talk about art criticism and how we talk about film. So I have that. And if you're interested in any of my daytime, well, I guess daytime, but sometimes nighttime.
Daytime, day job.
Day job. I mean, sometimes I work at night, so sometimes it's nighttime. But you can follow the University of Alabama museums. We're on all the big platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're also on YouTube and TikTok. We got students doing TikToks for us.
Nice.
And we have 5 museums that cover all manners of history. And I've learned to be a amateur paleontologist, archaeologist, naturalist, historian. I've taken on a lot of things through my job. So if you want to check out what we do at the University of Alabama with the museums, you can follow us on all the social platforms.
A regular Renaissance woman. I'll tell you what.
I try to be, and mostly because I have to be. So if I don't know what to do, I figure it out. So I try to do as much as I can.
Nice. All right. Well, we want to thank anyone who showed up for the live stream tonight or is checking this out on the what is it, the DVR, the podcast route. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you like the show, please go over and subscribe to the Where I'm From podcast YouTube channel. You can also leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I think Spotify does reviews or ratings. Help us float us up to more people. And you can check out everything about the show, show notes, links to the stuff we talked about, all of that stuff at billmeeks.com/whereimfrom, all one word. And also, I would like to mention, we're trying to do a call-in episode of sorts. I think I've found a theme. The theme is Thanksgiving because so many people go home for Thanksgiving. So if you'd like to be involved with that, it'll just take on Thanksgiving Day while you're home hanging out with your family, pull out your phone, shoot a 2 or 3 minute video for me. I'll compile them all together into a kick-ass episode. Shoot me an email, bill@billmeeks.com, to help me build that episode for later this month. Or, well, next month, I guess. November. Let's see. Other than that, shoot me an email at bill@billmeeks. Other than that, I'm going to take 2. Other than that, definitely shoot me an email at bill@billmeeks.com. If you have any thoughts about what Rebecca said tonight, if you want to talk about where you're from, I'd love to have you on the show. Past that, I think that does it for this week. It's been a great time. Rebecca's almost done 1.5 Toblowskis, which is pretty impressive.
I'm honored.
But please join us here next week where we talk to somebody else about where they're from. See you next time. And we're off the air.
Awesome. Well, that was fun. Thanks for having me on to talk about some of those things. I really appreciate it.
I would apologize for going so long, but you're the one who kept talking. So.
I mean, I don't. It's hard. Sometimes that happens when I live stream with Andy too. It's like we just should commit to 6 hours. Like that's the way it is.
Oh no, I am completely okay with this being one of the longer episodes. Another reason I'm okay with it is because I know with you, I won't have to do too much editing. So
well,
it's great.
I hope not. Hopefully, I sounded eloquent to try to be. But thank you for inviting me on, and I'll make sure this gets promoted from Supergirl Radio channels as well.
Also, it should be up. The edited version should be up on the main channel in a week or two, and I'll shoot you an email.
Okay, yeah, and tag us in all the things, and we'll share it.
Tag and tweet. All right, Rebecca, have a good night, okay?
All right, it's good to spend some time with you, and I hope things are going well.
Have me on Supergirl Radio sometime soon.
We will find. I'm gonna think of a way to bring you in.
Have you covered the Peter David Supergirl yet?
No, but I keep telling Morgan about it. And she's like, that sounds crazy. And I'm like, it is. But if I'll keep you in mind for that, because I don't know what we're going to do after our Supergirl Radio Rewind episodes. So we'll maybe the Peter David run will be a good one.
Yeah, there was going to be a Supergirl in the Flash movie that was probably going to boost you guys up a little bit. But now that's like, when's that coming out?
That movie's never coming. That's never going to see the light of day. I heard that Ezra Miller made a shrine to the Flash. Is that true? That he like
a physical shrine?
Yeah.
I had not heard that.
I heard something like that, and I was like, is that real? Did he do that? With Ezra Miller, I don't know.
Who knows what that guy these days.
But in the meantime, though, I'll think about ways we can bring in. But the Peter David one, I think, would be a good. We haven't done our Christmas episode yet, so if you want to do Christmas.
I am 1,000% behind a Christmas episode. Whatever you need, just let me know. I'm here for it.
We may do if we can do the Brandon Routh kitten movies.
Ooh, Brandon Routh and Kittens, right?
Yes, there's a sequel. It's a universe.
A whole universe of Brandon Routh and Kittens. I love that though because based on my history, I can come in as the anti-cat guy and really shake things up. I love it.
Yeah, that would cause some real trouble with Morgan, who has 2 of them, who probably will make an appearance on the podcast.
The facetious anti-cat.
Yes, so it'll probably either be that, but either that or the Katie McGrath Buttons movie that has I don't know, Angela Lansbury or somebody on that. But all of our listeners want us to do Buttons, so we're probably gonna have to do Buttons. So if you want to talk about actually that might be fitting because you talked about A Princess for Christmas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe you're the Katie McGrath Christmas movie guy.
Frankly, I was a little offended I wasn't asked back for Christmas movie last year.
Oh yeah, that was a Holly and Ivy, and I don't know what happened with that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was like a last minute thing or
Well,
something.
to be fair, you might have asked me to, and I still don't know if I was
Oh,
back. I don't know if I was
I
back up to
think
100.
I think you did have a conflict or something.
Oh,
I think
okay.
there
Gotcha.
was something. Yeah.
Yeah,
But that
the last half of the last year, I was a little bit. I wasn't full speed ahead kind of Bill. So
yeah. Okay, well, I'll think because we'll probably do buttons. So
excellent.
and maybe the Brandon Rouse kitten movies. I don't know.
I can wear Christmas pajamas. I still have a Santa hat and beard. I can do whatever.
Perfect.
Meeks Pitalik is here. I can put a Santa hat on him.
Oh, please do. Yeah. So I guess we'll let the listeners pick the Christmas movie like we did last year. So buttons is probably going to win though. That's what I think. But I'm really pulling for the Brandon Rouse kitten movies.
I will definitely. I'll look up both after we get done.
Yes,
here,
yes.
just to be
Look up
prepared either way.
Look up the Brandon Rouse kitten universe, the kitten cinematic universe.
The KU.
Yeah, the K.
The BRKU.
Yeah. It's expansive. All right.
Nice.
Well, thanks again for having me on, and I hope this episode turns out okay. And let me know
Oh,
if
it
there's
already
anything
did.
that you need. I'll send you some pictures and things.
Yeah, definitely think about what we talked about tonight, and anything you want to send over, feel free. I probably won't start editing this till Sunday or Monday. So
Okay. All right,
So you
cool.
have a couple
I'll
days.
send you an email with a bunch of links.
Excellent, and I have that list of stuff from the Facebook thing too.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. All
All
right.
right.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.